Hello, I'm Eric Sfulgoy, editor of CropLife magazine, here again with another Fireside Chat at the 2025 Tech Hub Live event. My guest right now is Austin Gellings from the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. Austin, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So for the folks in the audience who may not know, if you could explain AEM, what you do, who you represent, and your mission, basically.
Of course, yeah. So AEM, or the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, we represent over 1,000 different equipment manufacturers in the non-road equipment space. So that being primarily construction, agriculture, forestry, mining, and utility. So you think of all of the equipment you see on a farm or a construction site or a mining site. We represent those manufacturers of that equipment, really to bring the industry together to tackle common problems, and at the end of the day, provide the end users, whether you're a farmer or a construction worker or a miner or whatever that may be, with the tools they need to get the job done.
Very good. Now, we of course wanted to talk about the topic of navigating autonomy and data. And it's kind of interesting, because I know a lot of the sessions I've heard while I've been here at Tech Hub Live this year, they've been talking about not necessarily autonomy, but like the AI models, and pointing out the fact that basically the AI models can learn, but that sometimes the data that they're working from may not be as clean or as accurate, or maybe somebody brought up the point that, that if a number keeps appearing over and over and the AI model will kind of latch onto that, it may not be the number you're looking for necessarily. So again, when we're talking about this question of autonomy and data, what's the key problem with trying to navigate it?
Well, I think the first thing is, when you talk about data specifically, our ability to use data is only as good as the data we're getting, but also then being able to interpret that data and glean insights from it. And that's really the next frontier, and it's something we continue to get better at. Us as an industry, we've been doing this for a long time. We've gathered vast amounts of data. So now it's how do we use and leverage this data and gain actionable insights, and then that goes into the training the AI models, whether that's something for a fully autonomous solution or maybe an automated solution like a targeted spray application, as an example. But making sure that we're providing those models with clean, actionable, usable data.
Okay. Now, I know that AEM has something called the industry roadmaps. So explain what those are and how are they going to help in this effort?
About a year and a half ago, AEM, along with our members, really driven through our members, as we've had conversations around data and cybersecurity and autonomy, we've realized that there's been a vast amount of fantastic work done at the technical level, both within the individual companies, but also the standards organizations and bodies as well. But when you have conversations on these topics with folks that maybe don't have a technical understanding, but have a keen interest in our industry, whether that's from a regulatory standpoint or just wanting to understand how we're producing food, there's a need to be able to communicate that information at one level higher with them. And so this was really an effort to how do we take that great technical work and begin to put it in a way that we can communicate with those folks that don't necessarily have that technical understanding, but be able to provide them with, when we talk about autonomy, what do we mean? What does that look like? And what's the difference between automation and autonomy? And when we talk about data, what does that look like? There are various layers and levels of data within any system. And same with cybersecurity. How are we protecting the machine at the end of the day and the data that comes from it?
Yeah, good point. So you said about a year and a half now, the roadmaps have kind of been out there. So what kind of feedbacks have you gotten from your members and users of these roadmaps regarding how this has helped maybe them be better at learning, the navigating the data and the autonomy question?
Well, these aren't meant to be the end all be all.
Okay.
And these have really, the feedback, they serve as a fantastic conversation starter. Where do we start the conversation? And they really help to do that. And then we begin to expand upon them. And the other thing too, especially with the autonomy piece that we wanted to accomplish with that, is differentiate ourselves a little bit. When you talk about autonomy, traditionally in the conversations, especially from a regulatory standpoint, we tend to get grouped in with the on-road sector. But when we talk about equipment, whether that's being used in an agricultural or construction setting, we're different. We're in a different environment, a different use case, a different set of circumstances. And so we wanted to put something together that helps to demonstrate that portion of it as well, why our industry is unique and why people should be having conversations on these topics, specifically as it relates to the non-road equipment space.
Okay, so you mentioned the construction equipment side of the equation. Just, I know that's not this audience necessarily, but I mean, is it easier, harder for autonomy adoption to take place there than agriculture? And if so, why?
So typically what you see in the construction sector is a little bit more difficult. And so agriculture is kind of leading the way in terms of automation and autonomy because of the use case. In a construction environment, there are so many more external variables, so many more moving parts, rather than you think of like a spray application where you're making your similar passes, or a tillage application where you can map that out fairly easily based off the implement that's behind. Obviously there are things to navigate, but it's a little bit of an easier use case. However, when you peel that back and take it down to the fundamental level of the technology, all of a sudden we start to become very similar. And I mean, that's demonstrated by the fact there are a number of companies that operate in both spaces, right?
Exactly, yes. So I know this is a dangerous thing to do, but in sort of looking at the crystal ball, and I'm asking because autonomy in ag equipment, I've seen a lot of it taking place in what people tell me are repeatable pieces of equipment, tractors, tillage equipment, stuff like that. Crystal ball, when are we going to start seeing maybe sprayers, spreaders getting in the autonomy side of the equation, and what might that look like?
Well, and so when you talk about, right, there's autonomy and there's automation. When you talk about like sprayers and fertilizer and spreaders and that, there's already huge levels of high levels of automation within those machines to make the job of the operator easier. And you're already seeing some types of automation or autonomy happen in spray applications, specifically air blast sprayers in orchards. There are a number of companies that are doing that. Yeah. So the future is already here in a lot of aspects. Of course, there are lots of situations that we have to navigate, and the technology is only going to get better as the data gets better and the models for training them get better. I don't know exactly when that's going to be outside of we're already kind of there, but there's still a long runway to go as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've seen like examples of like autonomous grain carts, for instance, and again I get that there's a person in the cab of the combine and that's following it along, and I'm thinking back to like our magazine. We back in 1999 I think it was, we did an illustration where we showed a fully autonomous sprayer in the field, and it was basically like a sprayer with like a black dome that represented the autonomy part of it. So, and obviously that has not come to pass because we predicted it by 2010 we'd have that. We were way off on that one, sorry. But I mean, I've heard from folks talking about autonomy in like sprayers, for instance. Some people have told me they envision a unit that would be going through the field all by itself with somebody supervising it from an office someplace. Other people have told me, no, it's going to be like there'll be a central autonomous sprayer there'll be a mother sprayer kind of with a person controlling a couple of drone complementary smaller sprayers working through the same field. Which vision might be correct?
I'm going to say all of the above. That's maybe the easy way out. But really, I mean, the technology is going to evolve, and the farmer is going to decide what makes the best sense for their operation, and ultimately what technology is going to win out. And maybe they all do. Maybe there's a place for all of these different technologies. At the end of the day, it comes down to what's going to make the farm more profitable and make their job easier and provide them another tool in the toolbox to continue to feed the world.
All right, final question, because like you said, the industry roadmaps that AEM has out in the marketplace a year and a half. I mean, obviously that's a living document. I'm sure it's going to keep changing as market conditions change. So what are the near-term future plans for those documents?
Yeah, so the development started about a year and a half ago, and they were released in May. But like you said, the technology is going to continue to evolve and only get better. And with that, hopefully these documents continue to evolve and get better. So we're going to continue to update them to reflect where we're at as an industry, on an as-needed basis. But along with that, also continue to expand upon them as well and start to map out, both from the regulatory side and the standards side, how these all are intertwined and work together to really start to hopefully help people get a better understanding of where we're at as an industry when it comes to this technology, and be able to hand it to somebody, and they can hopefully, even if they walked in with no knowledge whatsoever about how this technology works in our industry, walk away maybe not an expert, but at least having a pretty firm level of understanding.
Very good. Well, Austin, thanks for joining us for this Fireside Chat at Tech Hub Live 2025. On behalf of myself and the CropLife Media Group, thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for the next one.